Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to take a break from my ongoing project of coding the combat system for a user's game and instead talk about a method of character creation which is pretty common in the tabletop role-playing game world, but which I haven't talked about yet. And that is the method that's often used in Dungeons and Dragons in particular, which is that you roll, for each attribute, you roll 4 dice, 4 six-sided dice, and you ignore the lowest one. So what I've got here is a program that simulates doing that. In the left-hand column, we have the names of various attributes. The names of the attributes don't matter, they're just for illustration. But then we've got 4 rolls, 4 random numbers from 1 to 6, and we've got the total of those 4 rolls except for the lowest. So for example, here we've rolled a 2, a 1, a 4 and a 2. That adds up to 9, but then the lowest is a 1. So if we just add up the highest 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's correctly given a result of 8. And similarly, we can look at all these and see that, for example, this one, it's noted that the 2 is the lowest and that we should have 15 and so on. In this one, it's noted that the 3 is the lowest, etc., etc. So that's what it does. Let's have a look at the code. So we have, as you can see, 3 passages. Initialize, where we set up the variables. Make rolls, where we do the random rolling and we also find the total, and display results, which does what it says. Most of the interest is here and here. This is really just a HTML table, so I won't spend too much time on that. But okay, so we have an array called att_name, and it's just got the names of some what might be attributes for a role-playing game. And as always, we can find the number of them by using, if it starts from slot 1, we can find the number of entries in an array by using the name of the array and then dot length minus 1. So this is the most important variable that we'll be using, $rolls, R-O-L-L-S. We set it up as an array. Then we have a for loop that goes from 1 to att_name.length minus 1. So from 1 to the number of attributes, to the highest attribute there. And in each of them, we set rolls Z to itself be an array. So this is going to be a 2-dimensional array. And then we set rolls Z0 to be 0. So, and there's a little note here which says rolls Z0 is the final result for the Zth attribute. I have to set it up at the start to be 0 because we're going to add to it. You'll see in the next passage that we add to it as we go through the rolls. So rolls Z0 is the final result for the Zth attribute. Otherwise, rolls ZY is the Yth die roll for the Zth attribute. So in other words, rolls 2, 3 would be the third roll for the second attribute. And then I've got my usual note which says that Z, Y, X and W are temporary variables. So we've set up the attributes we need, and then we go to make rolls, which is where most of the interesting stuff happens, I guess. So once again, we have a for loop that goes from 1 to att_name.length minus 1. You'll see that this line of code is identical to this one, which makes sense, of course. We need to go through each attribute. So we set X equal to 7. X is going to be the lowest roll for this attribute. We set it to 7 because we're simulating the roll of 6-sided dice, and so of course the highest we can get is 6, And so we want to start with a number that's higher than the highest possible value. If you're keeping track of the lowest roll of a set of rolls, or the lowest number of a set of numbers, you want to start with a number that's higher than any of those numbers. And similarly, if you want to keep track of the highest number out of a set of numbers, you want to start with a value that is lower than any of those values can be. Because if you don't do that, so let's say we started with 3, let's say we started with x equal to 3, and what if we rolled 4, 5, and 5? Well, none of those are lower than 3, so we'd never change the value of x, and we'd end up with x equal to 3. In other words, with the program thinking that the lowest roll was 3, but the lowest roll was not 3, it was 4, 5, and 5. So to prevent that, you want to have a number that is higher than any of the numbers that you're looking at can possibly be, and then the first value will always be lower than the starting value, and therefore it will always update to that first value. And similarly, if you're looking at the highest value, you want to start with a very low value, lower than any of the values can be. So x is the lowest roll that we've gotten for this particular attribute, and w is which slot has that lowest roll. So is it the first roll, the second roll, the third roll, or the fourth roll? And we have a for loop that goes from 1 to 4, and we do several things in there. First of all, we set rolls z, y to a random value between 1 and 6, so that's simulating the roll of a normal die. Then we set rolls z0 plus equals rolls zy. So we add to rolls z0, we add what we've just rolled. You will remember in the previous passage, we set rolls z0 for every value of z that we're using to be 0. So it starts at 0, and then it adds whatever we rolled in that particular roll. And then we update the lowest value if we need to. If rolls zy, if what we've just rolled, is less than x, if it's less than this lowest value, then we do two things. We set x equal to rolls zy, so we reduce it to this new low, and we set w equal to y. In other words, we say, well, the slot which contains the lowest roll is the current slot, the current roll that we just made. And of course, in the first roll, this is always going to activate in the first of the 4 rolls, because x is 7, and the first roll is going to be something between 1 and 6, so it's always going to be lower than 7, which is what we want. And then we go, and then we just have /if and /for. So you might say, well, hang on, that means that rolls z0 is going to be the total of all 4 rolls. We don't want it to be the total of all 4 rolls. We want it to be only the highest 3. Well, that's what we do here. We subtract the smallest roll from rolls z0. That value has been added to rolls z0, and now we're going to take it away, so it's not in there anymore. We set rolls z0 minus equals, which means set it to its current value minus whatever's on the other side of the equation, minus rolls zw. And remember that w is the slot which contains the lowest value of the 4 rolls for this attribute. And then we have a /for, and then we have display results. Now, display results isn't that interesting. It's just a HTML table which has the attributes, the 4 rolls, and the final result. You can have a look at that if you want to. It's quite long, but it's not as complicated as it looks. HTML tables always take up a lot of lines. They always sort of look, I don't know why that space is there. Anyway, they always kind of look more complicated than they are. But the main activity is in here, and then setting up the attributes is here. So if you're interested in looking at that code, you can get it from the usual place. There's a itch.io link in the description of this video, and there's 3 zip files there, and you'll find this in other projects. So I hope that's useful for some of you. As of the next video, I'll probably return to doing the combat system, but I just thought that was something that some people, might want to do if you're adapting a tabletop role-playing game, especially Dungeons and Dragons, to Twine, or making a game that sort of works in a similar way to a tabletop game. You might find it useful or interesting. And I will see you next time.